The recording has started.
The views expressed on Talk Real Solutions, hosted by Tyrone Thompson at talkrealsolutions.com, are the views of Tyrone Thompson and do not reflect the views of talkrealsolutions.com, YouTube, or etc. The content here belongs to Talk Real Solutions and its many contributors. Views and opinions expressed by all contributors belong to them and not talkrealsolutions.com or Tyrone Thompson, the host, or etc. All data and information provided on the site is for informational purposes only. Talk Real Solutions makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, correctness, suitability, or validity of any information on this site and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, or delays in this information or any losses, injuries, or damages arising from its display or use. All information is provided on an as-is basis.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is me, Brother Howard. I know I promised you guys some shows, and today I'm giving it to you. We're going to go into some history, some West Coast history about Stagecoach Mary Fields. For those of you that may not know or want to look it up, we're going to go into her story. I'm going to try to break it down throughout the story. Again, we are using a story, and let me give them credit. We're using stuff from the Black Cowboys and on iHeartRadio. If you guys haven't subscribed to them, subscribe and listen to the stories. Great stories, you guys. Outstanding stuff. And I know I promised, and because of some stuff that happened on the channel, I wasn't able to do it last week, but I'm here to do it this week. We're going to get into it, and we're just going to have some fun, and we're going to have some fun learning, hearing old stories, old folklores about a great woman who made an impression on everybody in the West. I don't think she was originally from the West. I'm not going to give the whole story out right now, but it's a great story. It's a good story. So I'm going to get into it, and right now I just I just need to pull up some things. You guys bear with me. You know I'm not the greatest on this board. I don't have the greatest personality. But what I want to do is get into the good stuff about Mary Fields. What many consider a strong black woman, what some people may consider the greatest black woman in the West. Interesting story. If you guys want to follow me with the story, you guys can call in at 1-717-908-1834. The participant code is 917324. Press the pound button and then press *6. and one to speak if you want to contribute to the story. So I'm not going to be on here long. I'm not going to be on here crazy. This is a night where I feel we shouldn't have to argue. This is a night we're just going to chill. We're going to learn some things and have the conversation from that. This is not going to be a backstabbing, backbiting, I should say, situation. This is going to be a good situation where we're all going to learn some things about Mary Fields. So without further ado, and again, I get this. So I want to give credit to Black Cowboys channel. Like I said, subscribe to them and go and listen to their podcast and things. It's very good, very informative, and they're not taking no shorts. This is not BS. It's not something that it's good. So I'm going to get into it. And then, again, you guys, you have to remember, I have to listen to it 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time, cut it off, make some statements or whatever, then cut it, and keep it going like that, because I do not want to get the channel struck. So I'll be doing that. I'll be cutting in, having or saying some things that I want to say about, what they're talking about. But it's not just to hear my voice. That's not. I would love to play it all the way through, but we can't do that. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to cue it up, and we're going to get into Mary Fields. And a lot of people have been asking for this, so we're going to get it in as soon as I can pull it up. And here we go.
The thrill of forging your own path is powerful. Nissan is bringing that thrill to our community in collaboration with the Black Effect Podcast Network to create The Thrill of Possibility, a community impact program and summit curated to support HBCU students.
Hey, hold on. Tyrone, can you hear that? I don't know if he's on here. I hope you guys can hear it. So I'll continue letting it go. This is a punk-ass commercial.
In science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, or STEAM, and introduce them to exclusive opportunities. Nissan is committed to creating opportunity for the whole community and ensuring that Black excellence is a part of the new future of automotive.
From meme coins to treasury bonds, markets dropping and bubbles popping, and your dad's uninteresting lecture on interest rates, JP Morgan Wealth Management knows the world.
We sipped and spilled whiskey with the town mayor.
In services through JP Morgan Securities, LLC, member FINRA/SIPC.
Shop Amazon for last minute gifts. Great deals for everyone on your list. Gifts for mom and gifts for dad. Even for your sister and your brother Chad. Shoot, we didn't realize we were supposed to get a gift for our dog walker guy. We almost forgot about our dentist Dr. Kurt. We didn't expect to get a gift from her.
Hopefully we can get
cousin, I forget his name. He got us something nice.
Now, at that time, at the turn of the 20th century, a saloon in Montana was a social space where neither women nor Black men were allowed or welcome. But Mary, a Black woman, drank there. She sipped and spilled whiskey with the town mayor. Now, at that time, at the turn of the 20th century, a saloon in Montana was a social space where neither women nor Black men were allowed or welcome. But Mary, a Black woman, drank there. She sipped and spilled whiskey with the town mayor, and all the men of power and influence in the town of Cascade, Montana. The mayor even passed a town ordinance that gave Mary a legal exception to continue drinking with the mayor and town fathers. Mary had a few nicknames: Black Mary, Shotgun Mary, Stagecoach Mary, but her mama first named her Mary Fields. As legend goes and photos confirm, she preferred men's coats and women's long skirts, and a good workaday hat, typically a men's one. Around the waist of her long hem skirt, she often wore a gun belt. In the holster, she carried a 6-shooter. But the 10-gauge shotgun was reportedly her preferred method of armed persuasion. They say she once got in a shootout with a pack of wolves. In the snow and dark of night, where the wolves have the advantage, Mary must outlast the circling pack. She must be more eager to survive than they are. She lets her shotgun sing its smoky song a few times before the night is through. Mary sees with dawn's coming light that she's won her showdown with the wolf pack. She's survived yet another long night in the wilderness. Okay, one thing about that story with the wolf pack. We don't know if that happened. We know very little for certain about long stretches of Mary Field's life. Instead, we're left with legends, mostly because she left no diary. She left us no record of her voice, her account of events. The public record is slim. She was rarely in the news. But when she was, the stories were typically tall tales of the West at its best. But more typically, later newspaper accounts turned out racist and sexist caricatures of a woman who thrived in a hard world and mixed up gender politics of the frontier. Mary Field was a black woman in the West, doubly troubled by issues of racism and sexism. Thus, her story is more obscured by time, harder to find confirmation and corroboration.
Now that's very important. He was saying, like, you know, this is a black woman in the West at a time where women were thought about in a certain way. She destroyed a lot of stereotypes. Now, some people may think a certain thing. That's cool. You can think that. I don't know, but this is a woman that destroyed a lot of stereotypes, and she did great things. And she was a woman of valor, a woman, like a cool woman of valor. And she did her thing, coming from slavery. And, you know, so let's get back into it. And you guys, I'm waiting on Sarge to call in because I made a personal call to Sarge. He loves history. He said he's going to call in maybe 15, 20 minutes into the show. So be on the lookout for that because he's going to be my co-host. And Greg, I see you on the line. And you know, Coons can listen to history too. Maybe it'll make them feel better about themselves. Let's get back to Mary Fields. Uh-oh. Hold on. Something happened. Did I? I think I pressed the wrong button.
The thrill of forging your own path is powerful. Nissan is bringing that through.
Instead, we're left with legends. Drinking with the mayor and town fathers. Mary had a few nicknames: Black Mary, Shotgun Mary, Stagecoach Mary, but her mama first named her Mary Fields. As legend goes and photos confirm, she preferred men's coats and women's long skirts, and a good workaday hat, typically a men's one. Around the waist of her long hem skirt, she often wore a gun belt. In the holster, she carried a 6-shooter. But the 10-gauge shotgun was reportedly her preferred method of armed persuasion. They say she once got in a shootout with a pack of wolves. In the snow and dark of night, where the wolves have the advantage, Mary must outlast the circling pack. She must be more eager to survive than they are. She lets her shotgun sing its smoky song a few times before the night is through. Mary sees with dawn's coming light that she's won her showdown with the wolf pack. She's survived yet another long night in the wilderness. Okay, one thing about that story with the wolf pack. We don't know if that happened. We know very little for certain about long stretches of Mary Field's life. Instead, we're left with legends, mostly because she left no diary. She left us no record of her voice, her account of events. The public record is slim. She was rarely in the news. But when she was, the stories were typically tall tales of the West at its best. But more typically, later newspaper accounts turned out racist and sexist caricatures of a woman who thrived in a hard world and mixed up gender politics of the frontier. Mary Fields was a black woman in the West, doubly troubled by issues of racism and sexism. Thus, her story is more obscured by time, harder to find confirmation and corroboration. We will attempt to tell her story with respect to both her legend as well as her truth. She was a woman on her own in the world who did most of her hard living after the age of 40. She lived with nuns in the daytime, drank whiskey with men in saloons at night. She delivered mail for the postal service, sometimes shouldering the mailbag as she trudged through drifts of waist-deep snow in order to ensure delivery. The mail must get through. Tough as she was also known for the verdant lushness of her well-tended gardens. Mary was a woman of dualities, and yet also limitless complexities. Over time, her legend has outshined the facts of her life. We will attempt to untangle her truth from her legend and myth. This is the life and legend of Mary Fields, the toughest woman to ever call the West her home.
Yeah, this a home, it's been a long road for us. We taking ownership over everything owed to us. Royalty, we surrounded by our heritage. Our fist up, cause we proud to be American.
I'm Zarin Burnett, welcome to Black Cowboys, an iHeart original podcast.
Hey, ask yourself what's really in the name. Sitting on a Mustang, riding through the plains. Buffalo Soldier, the king of the range. We in love with the cowboy way.
Chapter 6, Mary Fields, a.k.a. Stagecoach Mary. Mary didn't know what day she was born. She'd been born in slavery sometime most likely in 1830 or 1832. It said sometimes Mary celebrated her birthday twice in the same year. This worked out fine since Mary's birthday was whatever day she said it was. And whenever she said it was, the whole town would come out to celebrate. This was toward the end of her life when she'd become a living legend of the dying Wild West. According to an April 3rd, 1913 edition of the Great Falls Tribune,
Mary Fields has become to Cascade what the Cradle of Liberty has to Philadelphia, or Faneuil Hall has to Boston. She's sort of a landmark. Of course, in her case, the use of the word landmark has to be figurative, but Mary Fields is truly a historic character about the business center of Chestnut Valley. Those who came to the valley early recall that Mary was there when they arrived. Those who came later became acquainted with Mary, and the latest generation has known her since birth. In fact, everybody knows Mary Fields.
The town of Cascade was founded in 1887, shortly after Mary arrived at the nearby convent. Cascade quickly grew to be a town of 8,775 people, just in time for the 1890 census. By 1900, the town's population had swelled to 25,700, and Mary happily made herself known to all the newcomers who called Cascade home. One of her neighbors remembered her quite fondly. He was young then. He grew up hearing stories about her. She was locally famous. Then that boy grew up and became one of the most famous men of the 20th century.
Q&A session has started.
He grew up in Helena. He spent his youth on his family's ranch not far from Cascade. Mary Fields apparently made quite an impression on him. The all-American leading man wrote a truly loving tribute in Ebony magazine to the woman he knew as Black Mary.
They say Black Mary could whip any two men in the territory. She wore a .38 Smith & Wesson strapped under her apron, and they swear she couldn't miss a thing within 50 paces. She was tall, weighing well over 200 pounds, and except for an apron and skirt, wore men's clothes. Black Mary is what they called her, but her real name was Mary Fields, one of the most picturesque characters in the history of Montana.
In bold brushstrokes, the Hollywood actor paints the most detailed portrait we have of her.
She was a stagecoach driver, the second female to ever drive a U.S. mail road. Maybe because she was a Negro, she was never bothered by Indians. I remember seeing her in Cascade when I was just a little shaver of 9 or so.
Gary Cooper also tells the best story, one that historians would find familiar. Only he tells it with the benefit of a closeness of proximity of both time and space. So we'll have Gary Cooper guide us through this story. Of course, we'll correct him whenever he's wrong. Pop, you remember that Gary Cooper article from Ebony, right? Now, you read that as a boy. What do you remember about reading that?
I was 9 years old. We had just moved to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But we subscribe to Ebony, so you don't miss anything. And that was one of the issues. I saw Gary Cooper. I said, what is Gary Cooper doing in Ebony? I thought they were going to reveal that he was part black. So Ebony was good for that. But then that made me read it. So that's when I discovered Stagecoach Mary.
And what do you remember as a boy? Here you are and you learn about this character.
She reminded me of the women in my family. Women in my family could drive wagons. They would drive to the field. While the people kept working, they would drive the crops back to the shed. It wasn't unusual to see the women dressed in the same garb that we see Stagecoach Mary wearing and doing the same work. So for me, it was familiar. It wasn't any unusual at all. Not even the guns. Man, Eula carried pistols in her apron. And as her vision deteriorated, she got more pistols. By the time she died, she couldn't hardly move.
I'll hit you eventually.
Yeah. Just keep talking.
Now, Gary Cooper is kind of known as like a paragon of that laconic Western white ideal of the cowboy. But here he was singing praises of Mary Fields, and he understood that she was just as Western as him. Did that come through to you as a boy?
Yeah. That actually made me like Gary Cooper, because up to that time, I didn't care much about him. I liked him in High Noon, but in the other movies, he was always kind of bland to me. I like Randolph Scott. Herb Jeffries, But then after I read that, I had to change my view. Because he was bragging about her. She could outshoot anybody, and she could drink more alcohol. Only thing she could do more than drink it was hold it.
1832 was a busy year for America. On July 24th or thereabouts, Benjamin Bonneville crosses the Rocky Mountains, leading a wagon train west. It's the first wagon train to make it over the mountain range that divides the continent. That same year, noted racist and American expansionist Andrew Jackson wins re-election. Around that same time, Charles Carroll, the last living man who signed the Declaration of Independence, drops dead. A month later, a secret society is formed at Yale University. It calls itself Skull and Bones. 1832 is an important year in the history of the fight for equality in America, too. It was the first time a man had publicly advocated for the rights of women in America. At that time, only men were supposed to speak publicly in a forum like a public lecture. So if anyone was going to advocate for the rights of women in America at that time, it would have to be a man. It could be said that the same year Mary Fields was likely born, so was the concept of feminism, at least in American public discourse. The idea obviously predates a man mentioning it in a public lecture in Maine. The man's name is John Neal. It's Independence Day. After a planned speaker dips out, John Neal is asked to give a speech. Neal has no speech prepared. So when Neal strides to the pulpit of the Second Parish Church of Portland, Maine, he gathers up his words from inside his heart and speaks to the hearts of his listeners. He makes a reasonable case that their minds find impossible to argue away.
Now, let me stop it right there. Sarge, if you're on the line, press 1. If you're on the line, because I want you involved in this stuff here, Sarge, and it's very interesting the way they treated women back then. Like, wow. It kind of makes me feel some type of way. Sarge, if you're on the line, press 1. If you're not, I'm going to get back into the story because, like I've been telling you guys, I got to break it up. I got to do some things. But I just wish you got to take the information in. This is a great story. Her story is great to me. It's great. Sarge was saying he's going to come on and speak about it, and that will be great too. So I'm going to continue on. One of the greatest, maybe the greatest black woman in the New West. Probably the greatest, but let's continue on.
John Neal speaks to the themes of the holiday: independence, liberty, equality, democracy. Neal gives his extemporaneous speech, and it ultimately speaks far past America's celebration of independence, and instead it serves as iron-strong advocacy for the rights of American women. Neal borrows a familiar line of reasoning to make his case. American women are being taxed but cannot vote. In other words, it's a clear case of taxation without representation. The same slogan that...
Okay, Sarge said he just pressed 1. I don't see it. Damn. Hold on, Sarge. I'll try to get you on here because I know I told you. I'm not sandbagging you. I know I told you. Hold on. Oh, there you go. Is that you, Sarge?
Hey, man, I'm sorry, man. I forgot to put *6 first.
Okay. So that is you.
Hey, how you doing, man? I heard what you said about Sister Mary, and I got to concur in your assessment of her character. She was a truly remarkable, one-of-a-kind woman, and she definitely did not fit the expectations of what was expected of any woman in the 19th century, much less a black woman, so there's no doubt whatsoever about that. She was singular, if not only for the way she behaved, but her physical presence. The woman was over 6 feet, probably.
Oh, shit.
And
Sarge.
100 pounds.
Right. She was actually a bigger woman, and that's what some of the things that's going to come out. But, yeah, give some insight of what you know. We're like 12 minutes into and we haven't even got into the crux or stuff. But if you want to get some insight of Mary Fields, of what you know, you can. But we're going to get into the good stuff. You can.
Well, it's your show, man. But I'd like to ask your indulgence in maybe setting the backdrop for the epoch in which Mary Fields lives, because I think that it too is every bit as remarkable as her story is. The era in which she lived and the various currents that affected black people moving to the West, where Mary Fields wound up flourishing.
Right. But check this out. Sorry. Did you ask me a question or not?
No, I asked you. I mean, if you, I'm asking you to kind of allow me to set the backdrop in which Mary Fields lived.
Go ahead.
How did she wind up out west? How did she wind up in Montana? That's where she originally traveled from the east to Montana.
It was in Montana.
A Mother Superior was head of the convent in which she worked after she was emancipated from slavery, because she had a relationship with her, and she felt a loyalty to her when she became ill, and she traversed.
We're going to get into that, Sarge. You're destroying the story.
All right. Well, look. Let me set the backdrop then. Before you go into specifics, before I go into specifics about Mary Field. I think we got to kind of look at what happened with regard to they passed the Southern Homestead Act in 1867. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Black people couldn't take advantage of it too much, so they actually wound up taking advantage of the Homestead Act of 1862, which, as you know, would allow anybody who had the requisite amount of money, I think it was like $10, and staking a claim to get a certain amount of acreage in the West. And a lot of people took advantage of it. In the first place, large numbers of black people take advantage of were when they went to Nebraska. They would call that the Great American Desert, and the first blacks got into Nebraska right after the Civil War, and they settled in counties like Custer, Hamilton, Harlan, and Cherry. One guy named Robert Paul Anderson, who was a former slave, he had some of the largest land holdings in the state of Nebraska. Now, again, prior to the Homestead Act, there was only about 28,000 or so people of all races living in Nebraska territory. By 1867, 100,000 people had settled there. And so, now, President Johnson was the president. You well know, Democrat, racist, Southerner. And President Johnson, because he feared that additional Republican representation from the state, which was a largely anti-slavery, pro-Reconstruction state, could add support to those seeking to impeach him, he vetoed Nebraska's application for statehood, but Congress overrode his veto, and then they passed the Reconstruction Act. And the Reconstruction Act provided for black people to participate in Southern state politics and also to take advantage of many of the Reconstruction measures that Congress and the radical Republicans had passed. So
absolutely,
a lot of black people said, hey, opportunity beckons. And what was the wide open territory that was begging for people to settle it? It was the West. You had black people migrating to Kansas. You know, the reign of white terrorism against blacks throughout the South, again, Democrat South, caused blacks and whites to leave. By the late 1870s, Reconstruction was over. Federal troops had been withdrawn. The rights that blacks had enjoyed during Reconstruction were being abused and legislated out of existence by state and even some national Jim Crow laws. Black people were worried about going back to slavery, and as a result, you had all kinds of black families migrating to the West. Kansas, Nebraska became a major destination for many of these black people because of the possibility of land ownership. You had to file a fee of $10, and I think you could claim like 160 or so acres of public land under the Homestead Act, and you get title to the land once you had lived on it and worked it for 5 years. So all kind of people in black civil rights organizations, not civil, but black activist organizations invited black folks to leave their homes in the South to go west. And this was the start of the major exodus of blacks that a lot of folks attribute to a community organizing black man named Benjamin Pat Singleton. He organized communities in Kansas, Dunlap, Singleton, and Nicodemus. Nicodemus is the only one that lives today or survives today. It was founded in 1877. And about 600 to 700 black colonists came there, most of them from Kentucky and Tennessee. And these blacks moved to Kansas, settled in Kansas City and Topeka. So,
okay.
I think.
Well, Sarge, I want to get back to the story. You're going in, but let me play about 5-10 minutes of her story, and then we can go in again.
Oh, be my guest.
Is that okay?
He's that's a good story. Keep it up.
All right, cool.
New Englanders' revered ancestors once shouted to rally themselves to a fight for the independence of the nation a generation earlier. Was that not meant for the women of the same nation? Are their taxes any different? But then Neil makes another powerful appeal of oratory when he compares women of America to slaves. The Portland Evening Advertiser reports on Neil's plea for the rights of women to be equal to men.
This subject was discussed in a very amusing and original manner, but we suspect the fair are well satisfied with their present influence, notwithstanding Mr. Neal's objections that men make all the laws for the other sex and give them no voice in legislation.
She also split gender politics. She wore men's clothing, she wore women's clothing, she carried a gun, she smoked hand-rolled cigars, she drank whiskey with men in bars. Do you think that allowed her to escape the gender dynamics and the expectations both for a woman and for a black person in that time, so that she became an outlier who was free of society and civilization's expectations?
I don't think it allowed her to escape it, but I don't think she gave a damn about it. So that allowed her to escape it. The fact that she went about her business anyway. And if you agree with her, that was fine. If you didn't, that was fine too. Just don't come around me with that. So I believe her biggest accomplishment is the thing that is least understood, is that she lived as a free person.
While we may celebrate this first man to announce publicly on American soil that women were human beings too, we must take a second to step back and check how he makes his case. Neil compares women in America to slaves. Slaves. Always with the slavery. So then, what of Mary Fields? Is she doubly enslaved? As a black woman, according to America's leading feminist at the time, Mary would have been both a literal slave and a theoretical slave. This is the world Mary Fields is born into, which makes her resistance and her demand to be herself all the more remarkable. In the 1840s and 1850s, Mary Fields is the property of the Warner family of West Virginia. The Warners later migrate to Ohio, taking Mary with them. Although slavery is outlawed in Ohio, Mary remains with the Warner household as a domestic servant. They all settle in Cleveland. This is where Mary Fields spends her 20s. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln issues his Emancipation Proclamation, thereby freeing all people in the Confederacy from bondage. Mary Fields may have been freed by the Warner family soon after their arrival in Ohio, before the President's proclamation. Or perhaps, even though Ohio was a free state, Mary isn't truly freed by the Warner family until the conclusion of the Civil War. We don't know. We do know that Mary spent some time as a chambermaid on a Mississippi riverboat soon after, a free woman gainfully employed. Yet she eventually returns to live with the Warners in Ohio. But she doesn't stay long. One of the Warner children, Mary Warner, is about to start a new life when Mary Fields returns. She plans to become a nun and enter a convent. Maybe because of the sin and debauchery she witnessed during her time working on the riverboats of the Mississippi, or maybe it's to pursue a higher calling, or perhaps for the longing of a sisterhood. For whatever reasons of her own, Mary Fields decides to go with her. Mary Fields is a middle-aged black woman who is single when she is freed. What do you imagine life was like for a single black woman who's middle-aged in the middle of the 1800s? How does she make her way in the world?
There's a double question there. How does a single woman make her way in the world? And then what additional obstacles are there for single black women? They had been slaves, so now they're free. So exactly what does that mean? And then how does that relate to the other women who were already free? And are they now equal, or are these women somehow have a higher status? Then Mary
Unmuted.
All right. Yeah. I'm sorry, you guys. I was on mute. My bad. And what I was saying is with that clip that
Muted.
I just played about, they were talking about Ohio and they're calling it the Midwest. Now we see why it's called the Midwest, because we know if you look at it on the map, it's not the Midwest, whatever. But some history going on and them telling you why it's the Midwest, what's going on. And we're now getting into Mary's history of how she got from the Midwest to the West. And so, Sarge, I'm saying, because I got to break it up and everything, I'm sorry. Do you want to comment on this, Sarge? Or I could just play another.
We got to remember now, Mary Fields at this point in time is a fully matured woman. She's not quite middle age, but since she was born in 1832, about this time she's in her early 30s. You got to remember, the most remarkable and celebrated aspects of her life didn't occur until she was over 60 years old. Even though she had quite a storied life before that, but she really came to celebrity in her early 60s. So this woman had a lot of living and remember, as a single woman, all of her life, she never got married, according to any records I've been able to research on her.
A single woman who dressed like a man?
Some of the time, maybe almost equally with how she dressed as a woman. Yeah, probably so.
Okay, cool. Well, let's get back into it.
She wanted to do the work that was considered the province of men. So I guess, given her particular mindset, it would be understandable and even expected that she would want to dress as a man so as to minimize her femininity and be accepted in the world of men's work.
All right, great. Let's put a pin in that, Sarge. Let's get back into it, because that's going to come up, and it's going to be very important. Let's go.
Fields, to her great credit, walked through the world as if those questions had no import to her. She was walking through the world, living her life as a free person. And I think that's the real value of her life, is that that's what she did. Everything what people were talking about doing, when people were theorizing about doing, she was doing. So naturally, everybody talked bad about her.
Yeah.
But she was doing it. And it's interesting how the public perception of her is split. There's some people who think the legend is like Liberty Valance, but the legend is bigger than the story truth, so pick the legend. And then the others who think the truth is bigger than the legend, like Gary Cooper. Gary Cooper, who was from Montana, so he was raised on the stories. But you could also be raised on legends. But I tend to believe stories over legends. And I think Mary Fields, what they admired about her is that she was a free woman. You know, and it wasn't like she was in a free black community. She was just a big free woman.
That's facts, y'all.
The thrill of forging your own path is powerful, and Nissan is bringing that thrill to our community with cars uniquely designed to give you the confidence to grip life by the wheel and educational investments to enrich the Black trailblazers of tomorrow. As the first podcast network specifically built for Black listeners, the Black Effect Podcast Network is proud to collaborate with Nissan to create the Thrill of Possibility, a community impact program curated to support HBCU students in science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics.
Whether we're pulling prank calls on our friends or having an honest and elite athlete,
back when I was training over 30 hours a week.
Jesuit priests set sail from France, headed to...
I want to get into the good stuff.
The Ursuline Sisters is a cloistered order of nuns, also known as the Company of St. Ursula. The sisters were some of the earliest Catholic nuns to establish an order in the New World. The first were Spanish. Next came the French. In 1639, a small group of nuns and Jesuit priests set sail from France, headed to Canada. That same summer, they arrived in the New World. They quickly established an Ursuline convent in what would come to be called Quebec City. There, they began to teach native children. The arrival of missionaries in the New World is a fraught history. Often, the religious orders would force the indigenous communities to forsake their tribal customs, leave behind their native ways, and instead adopt the lives of, quote, good Christian men and women. 2 centuries later, for Mary Fields, employed as the groundskeeper, the convent means security, stability, and peace of mind. She also feels like she can be herself, which means she's known among the nuns to be, quote, irascible and, quote, difficult at times. She's also known to have a temper. Yet despite her prickliness, Mary Fields and the nuns live amiably and comfortably in the convent for the next 14 years. It's also where she meets one of her dearest friends, a lifelong ally who looks after Mary the way that Mary looks after others. Her name is Mother Amadeus Dunn. On July 2nd, 1846, in the town of Akron,
Now, Sarge, check this out. She moved into, she got with some nuns. They accepted her. She was a groundskeeper with the nuns. Did you hear that, Sarge?
Yes, she was, and according to all reports of her activities as a groundkeeper, she kept the grounds absolutely immaculate and well-groomed.
She kept them gorgeous. But she was also, as the guy is telling the story, she was also prickly. She wasn't with the religious stuff, which we may hear about later. She wasn't particularly religious, but she was about her business. And so I just wanted to hear if you heard that she was a groundskeeper, she was doing a thing, working for Catholics in the West. So you're following me now, right, Sarge? Are we following each other on this?
Well, I guess you could say she was in the West. She was in Ohio. I guess that's on the western frontier.
The Midwest.
Well, yeah, okay. I guess when people think of the West, I guess they're thinking like starting when you get to like Nebraska, Kansas territories, actually. But yeah, that would have been the western frontier, certainly in the time of the Revolution. You know, Kentucky, Mississippi, that would have been the West. But yeah, but she, you know, look, the nuns complained about her temper and difficult nature, and they really didn't like the fact that she cussed a lot. That's one thing they really didn't like. And she did a whole lot of cussing. She also developed a reputation for gunfighting, hard liquor, you know.
And fucking men up. And she also developed... Sarge, you're going too far in the story. Let me play it.
No, go ahead,
you're right, Sarge. You're right.
Been born Sarah Teresa Dunn. Her parents were both Irish immigrants. She was their 5th child. When she was 10 years old, her family moved to California to chase after what was left of the gold rush. But they left Sarah behind in Toledo at the Ursuline convent. 5 years later, she entered the convent as a novitiate. And then at the age of 18, she took her vows and became a nun. At the age of 28, she becomes Mother Amadeus. Meanwhile, Mary Fields is 40 years old. Mary Fields is certainly not as popular with all the other nuns at the convent. During her 14 years living with them, there are more than a few complaints about her demeanor. One sister, a nun named Mary Grace Connolly, later recalls stories told to her by older nuns of the convent who knew Mary Fields and warned that, quote, God help anyone who walked on the lawn after Mary had cut it. For her labors, Mary earns $50 a month in room and board. She has her own room, surrounded by women who would neither harass nor exploit her. She can read and write and is a devout believer, and her labors afford her her own form of freedom. She can come and go as she pleases. It's a modest life, but it's a vast improvement over her life as a slave. Her life is now hers. Sadly, her simple life will once again be uprooted by fates outside her control. In 1884, Mother Amadeus leaves the Ursuline convent in Toledo and heads west to Montana to start missionary schools. She founds a school and convent in Miles City, Montana, then another in Ashland, Montana. In October of 1884, Mother Amadeus creates a school for girls at the St. Peter's Mission outside of Cascade.
In any event, it was because of Mother Amadeus that Mary went to Montana. The nuns went to open a school for Indian girls in 1884 at St. Peter's Mission, where the Jesuit priests had worked among the Blackfeet since 1866. Because of the hard living and intense cold, I've seen it get 45 below zero myself, Mother Amadeus took pneumonia and lay dying in a crude log cabin. Mary Fields heard the story back in Ohio and lost no time in getting to her bedside of her friend. She nursed the nun back to health and remained in Montana to help the missionaries with the hard labor.
This story is oft repeated. The idea is that Mary Fields, back in Toledo, heard that her dear friend Mother Amadeus was dying in the Montana wilderness. So she bought a traveling bag and made plans to head west with a group of nuns and a Jesuit priest who were headed to Montana to join the mission. And we do have corroboration. In 1885, a nun at St. Peter's Mission in Montana wrote,
Mother Amadeus got pneumonia very bad. A Jesuit sent a dispatch to Toledo. In a short time, we had help. Reverend Mother Stanislaus of Toledo and Mother Mary of the Angel's Carol, and Black Mary Fields from Toledo and Mother St. Thomas of Cleveland.
But the story of her acting as the nurse may not exactly be true. There is some doubt. According to the historian D. Garceau Hagen, quote, from March through December of 1885, the nuns reported on Amadeus's long convalescence in letters to the Toledo convent. In all of this correspondence, not one letter identified Mary Fields as Mother Amadeus's nurse. In short, Fields' mythic role as a devoted nurse to the Mother Superior is not borne out by the evidence, end quote. Nonetheless, at age 54, Mary arrives in the West.
Now, Sarge, she left the Midwest. She going to help the sister out. They gave her a job, being a groundskeeper. Now she heading out west. She hadn't even got out west yet. Her story ain't really popped yet. And now she's heading out west.
Why she got kicked out the convent? The bishop got word of her behavior.
She ain't got kicked out yet, Sarge, because she ain't got with him yet. Like I said, Sarge, you gotta follow me because you're going too much forward. Let's keep within the context of the story that I'm playing right now. I know you know the history and everything, but let's keep it into the context of what we're playing. She's just now going out west, and she's what did he say, 49, 50 years old?
She was 54.
Yeah, she hadn't been out west yet. She was in the Midwest. Now she's going out west. She's an older woman, like a real older woman. Now she's going out there, and her story, her, what do you call it? Her
the saga. I guess the word is saga. You look for a saga.
Yeah, it hasn't really been told yet. She hadn't even been out west yet. When I'm saying out west, she hadn't been out to California, Nevada, Arizona. She ain't even got there yet.
In other words, you're talking about territories, not even states. We're talking about, Ohio is
exactly.
State. About the Western territories.
Exactly. At that time, you're exactly right. So now she's getting ready to go out there to link up with the nun. That's where she's about to go further west, not the Midwest. She's finna go further west to mess with this woman because the woman was having some issues. She going out there, and she went out there not by herself. She went out there with more people, and now she's going out there And go ahead, Sarge, if you want to say anything, but don't. I know you know. Don't give them too much, because But go ahead.
Well, you talk about when these, when some of these sisters went to Montana, and Mary Fields went there to be there to Montana. She went to Montana. I mean, she didn't stop at Kansas, Nebraska. She kept going north and west to Montana. So she was probably the only black person there in Montana, I believe. She's the only black person living there. Because there ain't that many people living in Montana anyway, whether they're black or white. And here they got a 6'2", 200-pound black woman who cusses like a lumberjack and hauls heavy materials around doing work, fixing buildings and whatnot. So, yeah, she has to be a standout.
And here's the thing and why I do these stories. There were more black people at that time in Montana than at this time in Montana. But I'm a press play. And if you don't agree, Sarge, let me know. But if you do agree, let me know.
No, I don't agree with that much, although I did find it a bit of a surprise to say that the narrator of this story had said that she didn't nurse necessarily. The evidence doesn't show that she nursed Sister Amadeus back to health. Mm-hmm. And from what I understood about it, that was a key part of her legend. The fact that the sister wanted her there.
Well, that's what got her.
To nurse people back to health.
When Sister Amadeus was having health issues, that's what got her to the West. She was in the Midwest.
She had a reputation for being able to nurse people back to health.
Right. But let me...
Small children and adults.
Right. I'm going to continue on. But remember, she was a groundskeeper, though. She wasn't... But let me...
She's kind of a jack of all trades. She did a lot of things. And I think she liked babysitting. She liked actually caring for people, despite all the toughness that she manifested.
Yeah. You're exactly right. Well, I'm gonna play it a little bit.
For good. For her room and board, she does housework for the nuns, and as mentioned, is the primary source of food for the convent. Mary Fields accepts no wages for her work. Instead, she enjoys the freedom to come and go as she pleases. In Montana, she finally finds a full sense of freedom, even from the slavery of wages. Now, Pop, you're a converted Catholic, much like Mary Fields. As a Catholic in America, is there any tradition to social justice that you found particularly Catholic as opposed to other Christian traditions?
As a matter of fact, yes. But that's before I became a Catholic. When we lived in Meadville, Pennsylvania, we rented a house that was owned by the Catholic Church. It had been a nunnery. Off the garage, there was a root cellar where you had the canned goods. And then in the corner, there was like a wooden board that was just standing up. So, and my dog shot behind it and disappeared. So I moved it and shined a flashlight in there, and you could see that it was a room. So I crawled inside and stood up. It was a big room with a clean clay swept floor, and there was an air shaft that ran out the side. You could feel the presence of people. I mean, you could actually feel it. So I told my mother about it. She said, well, go ask Father Assisi at the church. So I went over and asked him, and he said, well, you discovered our secret. We were active in the Underground Railroad. That house was safe because men were not allowed to go into a nunnery. So we had the runaways there because the slave chasers and the men could not go in there to look for them. So everybody who got there got away safely to Canada. So that's when I got respect for the Catholic Church.
You've never told me that story. I love that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was great though. You could feel history. I mean, you could actually feel it, and the people you could feel their breath. The people that had been in there. I mean, the sweat. It was a wonderful experience. And they all got away.
Let it play.
Mary Fields throws herself into the cultivating life. She keeps chickens. She hunts regularly. She gardens, both food and abundant flowers. Her garden rivals Eden for its variety. The sisters and Mary Field fall into a rhythm of life in the wide-open Big Sky wilderness of Montana. Together, the women labor to build something permanent.
After 8 years, the Ursuline sisters' stone convent was completed, and Mary and the sisters moved from the log cabins which had been their home.
As the convent and girls' school grows more and more successful and solvent, Mary Fields becomes an integral member. Despite her prickly personality, it helps that Mother Amadeus has her back. The Mother Superior doesn't let anyone mistreat her friend. Her loyalty is repaid in kind by Mary. She labors possibly hardest of them all to make the convent a success, to ensure the children are fed and educated, and that the nuns never suffer from the privations of a fickle wilderness where one bad season can mean starvation. Outside the convent, life in Montana in the late 1880s is tough. To ensure the convent is well supplied, Mary drives the mule team wagon into town and back again, typically alone, except for her trusty shotgun.
Mary often spent the prairie nights fighting her way through storms and braving great dangers. One night, a pack of wolves frightened her team. The horses upset the load, and she stayed guard all night over the precious cargo the nuns needed just to exist. A blizzard overtook her on one trip. The road was lost from sight. Mary walked back and forth all through the night to keep from freezing to death.
Despite the dangers outside the convent, it was Mary's temper that ultimately upended her welcome.
Mary might have lived all her days working at the mission had it not been for her terrible temper and her...
Now, listen, I want to stop it right there. She had a temper, and, that kind of led to other things. But she was working with the nuns, and she's doing a thing, helping out the community. Now, you haven't heard about any robbing, stealing, bullshit, have you, Sarge?
Well, I certainly don't think there's any evidence whatsoever that that was a part of the character. She might have been rowdy, but she definitely wasn't a criminal.
Yeah, but when I heard the name Stagecoach Mary, the thing I thought of was that this woman must have been robbing stagecoaches.
Oh, you thought she was an outlaw?
Must have been. Right, but
okay.
My thinking at the time when I was a younger cat, she was robbing. That's not what the history.
Exactly the opposite. She was protecting the stagecoaches and the mail against thieves and robbers.
Right. That's not what the history shows. This woman was staying with nuns, I don't know for how many years, 14 years before she came out to the West Coast.
She stayed with them for 15 years.
Right. That's when they went out to the West Coast. And so, the Stagecoach Mary, the thing I was hearing as a kid, only thing I heard, the name, I'm thinking she robbing, stealing it. That really isn't the case. Not the case at all.
Not even. She was actually a private contractor, security, kind of like law enforcement in a way.
Right. But like I said, we're going to get into it. I'm going to play. We only got about 10 more minutes, but I'm going to let it play.
Lack of fear of man or beast, she was forever fighting with the hired men, and on one occasion fought a gun duel with one. No one remembers how it turns out, but Mary was still around when it was over.
Historian Dee Garceau-Hagan agrees with Gary Cooper. She writes, quote, Mary Fields probably would have lived and worked at St. Peter's until she died, had it not been for Bishop Brondel in Great Falls. When the bishop heard rumors of Fields' uncouth behavior, he wanted her off the premises. Fields drank alcohol and sometimes cursed, transgressions of acceptable female behavior on church grounds, end quote. The bishop finally has a good reason to demand Mary Fields be removed from the convent when Mary Fields gets into the aforementioned gunfight. On September 9th, 1892, a white man, a hired hand named John Mosney, gets into a tussle with the ever-prickly caretaker. According According to the contemporaneous accounts, quote, John Mosney and Mary Fields touched rifles at each other, but there was no fire. A standoff at a convent? Well, that's how Mary rolled. Guns fired or not, either way, Bishop Brondel is pissed, and he wants Mary gone from the convent.
The bishop was bombarded with complaints about her and wrote to the sisters ordering them to send the black woman away. It was a heartbreaking thing. For all the work Mary had done in the 10 years she spent in the nun service, she hadn't received a dime. The nuns all felt Mary had a lifetime home with them, but the bishop's orders had to be obeyed.
One of the nuns notes how the bishop's order to evict Mary Fields from the convent troubles the heart of her friend.
It is hard for Mother to dismiss this faithful servant in her old age, but the bishop's orders are peremptory. The darkness of obedience will be light in the next world.
Another nun frames the dire, albeit helpless situation, noting that
she had been overbearing and troublesome, but it was our intention to keep her till death.
Mary Fields is 62 years old. She's also now an unemployed black woman in Montana in 1892.
The thrill of forging your own path is powerful, and Nissan is bringing that thrill to our community with cars uniquely designed to give you the...
Well, let me just describe this tortilla that Eva made.
Yeah.
It is perfectly round. Only because you were watching me. But this is...
And see how they not only find quality sleep, in unique circumstances, how they also use their sleep to perform at the highest level. Listen to Chasing Sleep on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
They would promise to pay when they worked in the summer. Mary went broke twice, and Mother Amadeus gave her another start each time.
In Cascade, Mary Fields is the only black resident. She fast becomes the subject of local talk. She's criticized for wearing men's clothes. She's gossiped about for owning a gun. And she's ostracized for drinking whiskey, especially in a saloon with the men of town. But Mary's such good company, the men of Cascade make a special exception for her.
They say Mary had a fondness for hard liquor that was matched only by her capacity to put it away. And it's a historical fact that one of Cascade's earliest mayors, D.W. Monroe, gave special permission to let Mary drink in the saloons with men. A privilege, if you want to call it.
To modern listeners, this may sound rather fun and quaint, but it's far more than that. It flies in the face of both rampant sexism and unremitting racism. Mary Fields demands respect, and she gets it. This is not normally the case for women in the West or black men. It's unheard of for a black woman. And it occurs against a backdrop of unimaginable racial violence. According to the Leavenworth Standard, in 1893,
much displeasure was caused by a wedding at Glendive, Montana, because the residents did not approve of the match. Miss Emma Wall, the bride, a colored girl, and the groom is a white man named John Orr. The people tarred the groom and whitewashed the bride, rode them on rails, and forced them to leave town.
Thus, it's important that Mary Fields has the backing and the blessing of the town fathers of Cascade. It not only allows her to drink in the saloon, it likely protects her from racist harassment and possible violence. But she also still needs steady employment. It's her old friend, Mother Amadeus, who once again steps in to aid Mary Fields with life as a single woman on the frontier.
Mother Amadeus went to the government. Doubtless the bishop never knew about it, and asked that Mary be given the mail route. They gave Mary the route between Cascade and the mission itself, and each day, never missing a one, she made her triumphant entry into the mission, seated on top of the mail coach, dressed in a man's hat and coat, and smoking a huge cigar.
Thanks to the help of Mother Amadeus, Fields is awarded a 4-year, quote, star route contract from the U.S. Postal Service. She is the second woman in the United States and the first black woman to drive a wagon for the Postal Service. Around 5 years later, she renews her contract to continue working for the post office as a wagon driver. This is when she earns her nickname, Stagecoach Mary. And she earns it for good reason.
Mary could drive. She could use a 4-horse lash with a dexterity that made a man green with envy. She could also use the 6-shooter with equal accuracy. There was a time when Mary's friends claimed if a fly lighted on the ear of one of the leaders of her 4, she could use her choice of either shooting it off or picking it off with her whip end, and that if she was a mind to, she could break the fly's hind leg with her whiplash, then shoot its eye out with a revolver. This accuracy with whip and shooting iron, however, is not a matter of Mary's boast. She was always modest about her claims as to either line. But it is a well-known fact that she had an ability in both.
From 1896 to 1903, Mary Fields is pure hell on a wagon trail. She drives her mule team like a chariot from ancient times, and she's late for the war. For 7 or so years, she is a free woman, one riding high on the seat of her wagon, tearing through the wilderness of America, well at home beneath the ceiling of that big blue sky that stretches over Montana. One century is about to give way to a new one. The 20th century dawns with a limitless sense of promise and newness. It will later be called the American century. At the beginning of the American century, Mary Fields is one of America's freest citizens. But she's not necessarily safe, as unchecked racism continues to spread across the West with the coming of the Easterners and their ideas of civilization. In 1904, down in Humphrey, Arkansas, a post office is blown up. The reason is simple. The post office dared to hire its second black postmaster to run the station. Noted black educator Booker T. Washington is said to have remarked in 1906, "In many parts of the South, the white people would object seriously to colored people handing them a letter through the post office window, but would make no objection to a colored mail carrier handing them a letter at their door." Mary Fields' life serves as testimony that his statement also held true in the West. And as life insists, things can't remain the same for too long. Her friend and protector, Mother Amadeus, is sent away to Alaska to start a new mission up in that even more remote wilderness. Mary Fields must stay behind in Montana.
In 1903, Mary made her home in Cascade. Her stagecoach days were over, and her lifelong friend, Mother Amadeus, had been sent to Alaska to start new missions. Mary began taking in washing and soon turned her home into a laundry. And though she was about 70 then, one day she was having a drink in the saloon when a man passed whom she said owed her $2 for laundry. Following him up the street, she grabbed him by the shirt collar, knocked him down with a fist, then returned to the saloon and announced, "His laundry bill is paid."
A local newspaper reports on Mary's later years, writing that
she does laundry work as a means of gaining a part of her living, and does that as she drove a coach and four very well. In the summertime, Mary shows that aesthetic nature still lives, for she cultivates a bed of flowers, and her favorite flower is the pansy. No one has prettier pansies than Mary Fields, and no one is happier in having the flowers than she. Her neighbors get much pleasure from Mary's flowers, and not a few of them have been delighted to be presented with a pretty bouquet with Mary's good wishes to boot.
Stagecoach Mary, the toughest woman in the West, who also loves pansies. Her truth is far more complex than we can ever know, or her neighbors understood.
There's some peculiarities in some of the coverage. Sometimes people will make you an exception in order for them to be able to like you. So you're not just a regular black person, you're a Stagecoach Mary, the baddest person anybody ever saw. So I can be.
So Sarge, they're ending it right now, telling the good history. You know, when I was a kid, when I heard Stagecoach Mary, I thought she was sticking up stagecoaches. Thought she was robbing shit. That's not the case. It's not what she did. Sarge, you want to speak on it, bro? Because
well, I'm gonna tell you, man. I'm gonna love any black person, but especially a black woman who believes in the right to keep and bear arms. Now, that's a woman after my own heart right there. And I think a vital lesson to learn about Mary Fields is it's quite obvious that no matter what resentments she may have had in having to confront the obstacles arrayed against her, she clearly never saw herself as a victim. She was determined and ruthless in her efforts to overcome whatever obstacles were presented in her path, and to the extent that she could be, self-reliant as she could be, although, of course, she clearly received aid from people who either admired her or were her friends and or her colleagues. So
yeah, she got a lot of love.
That enabled her self-sufficiency. and the fact that she was really as self-reliant as you can be, as most people living in that era and that time and that region had to be. They didn't have any other choice, really. It's just that some made more of it than others. And Mary Fields clearly was an individual who had obstacles arrayed against her that others of other races didn't have, and she prevailed in spite of it and even triumphed.
Yes, she did. Well, you guys, listen, I called Sarge, say, hey, man, I'm doing this. I want you to speak on this. I know I promised you guys Stagecoach married a woman. Sarge was so cool. He said, yeah, I'm going to come and talk on this, which is a good thing. I think I got maybe like 5 minutes or 10 at the most to end the story. And Sarge, I thank you for stepping through, man, and providing some context behind the story. This woman she did a thing, man, and she messed with the Catholics. She stayed with them, I think they said 14 years, probably longer than that. She did a thing. I don't think she was a practicing Catholic or whatever when she got to the West, but it's a great story. So let me finish it up, Sarge, and after that, man, I'll get your I'll talk about my summarization of it. You can talk about yours, and then I guess we can move into something else. But it's only about another 10 minutes.
We're friends with you, but that doesn't require me to be friends with any other black people. I'm always suspicious of that in a situation like this. Now, not everybody, but you can hear it in some of their descriptions. Or they're trying to make it an exception, even though in the context of her life, it's not exceptional. That's just the life that she lived. If you declare that you don't like black people, and then Stagecoach Mary comes along and you like her, you got to make her different, as opposed to changing your position.
This gets back to the issue of perspective and perception when it comes to Mary's life story.
Yeah, and it depends on who tells it. See, that's why it's important to have this conversation, because then for all the misrepresentations, this will be a counterbalance.
When she's an older woman, barely a physical challenge to anyone anymore, Mary Fields becomes an unofficial mascot for the local baseball team.
For every game, she would fix a buttonhole bouquet for the members of each team and 5 large bouquets for each of those who made home runs. The flowers were from her own garden, yet she would punch any man in the mouth who talked against her team.
Mary Fields' position in the town of Cascade was complex, to say the least. In 1912, her 2-room cabin burns down. The town of Cascade comes out to rebuild it. When she can no longer drive her wagon and work as the mail carrier for the town, the new Cascade Hotel offers Mary free hot meals. And finally, in 1914, when Mary is next to death, the mayor of Cascade, the same one who gave her special dispensation to drink in the saloon with the men of town, Mayor D.W. Monroe, he moves Mary into a hospital at Great Falls. She's attended to in her final days. As the historian D. Garceau Hagen notes, quote, "The implication of these narratives is that race was never an issue, that the people of Cascade transcended their color prejudice and welcomed Mary Fields into their midst. In this way, Cascade residents created a collective memory about their town as a sheltering place. But the myth of the community embrace is too simple, for the evidence suggests a profoundly ambivalent relationship between Fields and her white contemporaries in Cascade." That's the historian's opinion. But it's more complex than that, and perhaps also simpler, too. Gary Cooper was there. He may have been a boy, just 9 years old, but he was there. He knew Mary Fields, and his recollections of her and the town is slightly different.
Mary was one of the melting pot pioneers, black, white, and yellow, who came from Tennessee and places beyond the seas to help conquer and tame the old Wild West. When she died, the town mourned her passing, and they buried her at the foot of the mountains by the winding road that leads to the old mission.
There's an interesting aspect of this that Mary Fields has both a racial legend as a black woman in the West, but then also, as you and I would talk about it, an American legend as a free person. Is it possible to have those conversations at the same time, or do you kind of have to treat her as not two different people, but to see her through two different lenses?
Because of that duality, you absolutely are both. You can be the American legend, which is the totality of your existence, and for your own people. Like Frank Sinatra was the absolute artistic hero of Italian people. And he was an absolute artistic hero of America. And they both had a different claim. And they both had a legitimate claim. And neither one contradicted the other. And it's the same way with Mary. The things that made black people proud of her were things that made black people proud in the face of oppression. The things that made Americans proud of her were the things that you do in the face of threats to your freedom. You know, that you have to live a free, principled life and do it without regard to consequences for you, that your principles do not change. And and she was that way as an American, and as a black person, she took no shit from white people. So
no, she did not.
Now, let me say this, and I'm going to end it right there. This is an American that didn't take no shit from black people. I'm going to end it right there. What makes her story? See, I thought she was robbing, stealing. Before I did the research, and I did the research before, but some people might have thought it was like, if you hear the name Stagecoach, you think, she was robbing stagecoaches. But that actually wasn't what she was doing. But she broke down barriers. And see, for me, it's really important. This young lady, or older woman at the time, broke down so many barriers. She didn't give a fuck. Now, I'm going to drink with you men up in here because I can. She stayed with nuns. The nuns wasn't really feeling what she was doing because she drank and she did it. But she was kind of one of the first, and this is why she's famous. It's not because she was robbing stagecoaches, which is what I thought when I was young. No, that's not why she's famous. That's not a history. She's famous in historical because she was a black woman that stood on her ground. And also, she stood on all women's ground and said, hey, you can't keep me out the drinking with y'all or this and that. I can do what the hell I want to do. You can't put any restrictions on me because I'm a woman. That's her history. That's her thing. She was a cold, bad woman. And she demanded respect. That's why I wanted to get this story out. Yeah, I'm going to let Sarge go. Then after Sarge go, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to play the rest of the story. Then I'm going to open it up and do my thing. Sarge, you there?
Yes, sir. And I'd just like to add that after the woman died on December of 1914, the people of the town got together money to bury her in a cemetery on a road that she drove regularly that linked Cascade to the mission that, she worked at with the nuns. And her funeral was either the largest in Cascade, Montana to that date, or one of the largest. People came around. And when that historian made that remark about her relationship with the people in the town being ambivalent, I don't have any doubt that it probably was. But given her outsized personality, her aggressiveness, her prickly temper, I would be surprised if she didn't have a contentious relationship with some of the townspeople, even if she was a white woman, say nothing of her being a black woman. So I'm not at all surprised by that. But I think in the main, she was admired by people who even didn't like her very much because of her courage, her fearlessness, and her hard work ethic.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sarge. She pushed the line. And we're talking way back in the 18. When did she die? 1914, you said?
December 5th, 1914.
Right. She was pushing the line in the 1800s. And what I mean by pushing the line, the social norms. She pushed the lines of the social norm. Oh, I can't drink in here. No, I'm going to drink in here. And ain't none of you motherfuckers gonna. But she was also a big woman. So sorry, I don't know if, she was a big woman. So she probably kicked a little ass. I don't know. But she pushed.
Big, strong woman.
Right. And she pushed the social norms. She wasn't down with the program. I think that's what makes her famous and makes her. She pushed the boundaries and said, "No, I'm not going for this. I'm gonna do what I want to do. I'm pushing back against this shit because this shit is not cool. It's not real."
You want to hear, Howard, a poem or a bit of doggerel she is supposed to have written, and people said that they heard her say, I don't know if this is legend or not, but this is a poem that she wrote. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it starts off like this. I am Mary Fields. People call me Black Mary.
Hold on, Sarge. Deep said, can he get on? Deep, did you press one? I'm sorry, Sarge. Let me try to see Deep, if you press one, man, I don't know. There's a lot of people on this line.
And then you got to press *6 first and then 1.
Yeah, I could pull you up if you do that. Press *6 and 1. Deep, I can pull you up. But go ahead, Sarge, and I'll.
Yeah, I think this poem.
I'll monitor it.
I think it's very enlightening, and it reveals how she thought about herself. So even if she didn't write it, I think it's very instructive. Anyhow, she says, I am Mary Fields. People call me Black Mary. People call me Stagecoach Mary. I live in Cascade, Montana. I am 6 feet tall. I weigh over 200 pounds. A woman of the 19th century. I do bold and exciting things. I wear pants.
No, she didn't write that shit. She didn't write that.
I carry a pistol. I love adventure. I travel the country, driving a stagecoach, delivering the mail to distant towns. Strong, I fight through rainstorms. Tough, I fight through snowstorms. I risk hurricanes and tornadoes. I am independent. Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody tells me where to go. When I'm not delivering mail, I like to build buildings. I like to smoke and drink in bars with the men. I like to be rough. I like to be rowdy.
Yeah.
I also like to be loving. I like to be caring. I like to babysit. I like to plant flowers and tend my garden. I like to give away corsages and bouquets. I like being me, Mary Fields. Now, I don't know if she wrote it or not, but I think it's
I don't think she wrote that, Sarge. I don't think she wrote that, but she did all of that.
Well, and if she didn't write it.
Yeah, no, it encompassed everything, actually, that she did. She was a different person. She did it her way, and she didn't take any any shit. Now, Deep, are you there, Deep? Pressing 1. What I'm going to do, Sarge, I'm going to play the last. It's only about maybe, but you there, Deep? It's only about 5 minutes. I'm going to play that, and then maybe we can get to Deep. Then let me see what he's saying. Deep, press 1, bro. Well, I don't know if he did it. I'm going to finish it out, Sarge, and then I'll open up the line. Maybe Deep will come in then. Let's just finish it up. And what Sarge probably, he already finished it up, but we're just going to let it go.
So we could all love her.
When she's buried, a priest from St. Peter's Mission performs the funeral service. The owner of the New Cascade Hotel is one of her pallbearers. Flowers, which were something Mary Fields was known for growing and for giving as gifts to those she liked or wanted to celebrate, are in abundance at her funeral. Her final earthly moment is lavished with blossoms and bright colors. In death, the town pays their respects to the woman they've known as Stagecoach Mary. The West was a place of freedom, a beacon that called to those who longed to be free of forced servitude and the whip, free from the civilization that once called them a slave. Mary Fields went to Montana for reasons of her own, whether to help an old friend back to health or because she wished to go west and find a new life for herself. She did it her way. There, in a town where she was the only black woman, she managed to carve out a life for herself, where she was free to be herself, how she wanted to be. She drank with men in saloons. She got in fistfights when she felt it was called for. She cared for others lovingly, and they cared for her in return. And when she was gone, she left a large hole in the heart of her community. But she also left behind a legend, as big as the Montana sky. Mary Fields was a survivor, a self-directed woman, a true legend of the West. Thanks for listening.
Well, there it is. And Stars probably summed it up better than they summed it up. And she was a pioneer. She did some great things. So what I'm going to do right now, Sarge, I'm going to take it off Q&A, hopefully. And you guys can talk about what the hell you want to talk about. But Sarge, you hit the nail on the head with this a lot. I appreciate that. That's why I called you. Hey, man, get involved in this. I want to thank you. Brother, I appreciate you.
Well, I told you what we talked about earlier, Howard, and I told you, man. Look, back in
Q&A session is over. All participants are unmuted.
5,000 years ago, everything that was needed to build a supercomputer or 747 was available to anybody. But nobody knew how to do it. They didn't have the techniques. They didn't have the knowledge. Knowledge is probably the most important thing in human existence. If we have knowledge, we should share it with each other. Knowledge is intrinsically valued in and of itself for its own sake. And I think whatever we can, we owe it to ourselves and to others to share what we know with them. So I'm glad you gave me the opportunity. I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to share what I know with the TRS audience, because that's the way I roll, man. I'm telling you, everything I learned life's lesson. And people...
Yeah, and hold on, Sarge. Deep says he's in the queue. Deep, just talk. Everybody, you're unmuted. Everyone is unmuted right now. Just talk. You're good.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, Deep, what's up?
What's up, Sarge? My man, my brother from another mother. Hey, Howard, big ups to you. I love what you're doing on the show tonight. And I just wanted to share something that Sarge doesn't share. Being a military person Here's what Sarge doesn't tell you, that they get intel that the general public doesn't get. So they know shit that's going on 10 years in advance. But they're not in a position to tell anybody about that. Now, my point is that everything Sarge is talking about, and I know Sarge gets a lot of pushback and he gets a lot of flack, but I always respect my brothers who went the military route, because I used to give the ASVAB test in the Presidio in San Francisco. I used to give the military entrance exam. So I know the mentality. And, you know, I don't really slump on cats like Sarge who got stripes in this game, man. He got stripes in this game. That man has been to war. He done seen dead
Well,
bodies.
nigga, I was in the military too, and I've been to war and everything. You ain't giving me no love.
Okay. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I'm a vet. I got my veterans ID, Sarge.
Okay.
You got the veterans ID?
You got stripes in this game.
Yeah, I got a lot of stripes. But go ahead.
Okay.
But go ahead. I ain't gonna interrupt you.
With
Make your
that
point.
being said, everything that Sarge is talking about, that's truth, and you know it's truth. And what the audience needs to understand is that when you hear people talking about life experiences, they need to understand what's really going on. It's not subjective. It's not objective. It's personal. It's personal. Because just like you said, my man, you were in the military, Sarge was in the military. Everything that y'all experienced, that shit was real life.
Don't forget Blockhead Tyrone too now. He was there too.
Okay, yeah, Tyrone, he was there too. With that being said, my point is that the majority of the people who are part of the audience that we listen to and we're talking to, man, they don't know nothing about that. They don't know nothing about seeing dead bodies. They don't know shit about that.
Well, what's that got to do with Stagecoach Mary? Are you gonna?
Here's what it has to do with. Here's what it has to do with. Is because with Stagecoach Mary, there were dead bodies along the way.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. You didn't hear the story. I don't think you listened to the Sarge.
Wait a minute.
You can go ahead, Sarge.
Wait a minute.
Not
wait
true.
a minute.
I have a question to ask.
Nobody got
May I
killed
ask a question?
on the way. Nobody got killed on the way.
Yeah, Miss Lady, you can go. You can go
Okay,
after.
so-
You can.
No, I'm done.
Miss Lady, let him finish his statement, Miss Lady. Then you can go.
No, I'm done. I want Miss Lady to chime in. Go ahead, Miss Lady.
Okay, she was an amazing person. And she blazed her trail. Of course, everybody needs help along the way. You never do it on your own. So she did, especially the Sister Amadeus. And but then I have a question though. It just seems like she's what some might deem an exceptional Negro, which is an old term. And because she was so exceptional, and like Sarge said, she worked very hard. She was a big woman. She was a tall woman. She was a strong woman. She had some skills. She
Understand she did that gardening and beyond excellence. She made sure there was food so they wouldn't starve in those convents. She would brave storms and inclement weather to make sure that food got delivered.
Damn, Miss Lady paid attention, huh?
She could shoot. She could shoot better than the men could shoot, with the correct aim. She was very brave. She was exceptional. Does it take a Black woman to be exceptional in order to be accepted and respected by white society?
No.
Who you asking that question to? Who you asking that question?
No. I'm
anybody.
I'm answering. No, it does not. And Miss Lady, in the spirit of your question, what it takes is a man to acknowledge all those things that you just said. What it takes is a man to acknowledge the fact that he has this warrior princess.
Let me go after you.
Wait, okay. All right. Let me finish.
I mean, she also was very masculine. She had a loving heart.
Okay.
Hey, Ty, we can take it off YouTube because I wanted to get into that conversation because I think she may have been, or I want to question, but go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, my only reason I brought that up was because she would be viewed as non-threatening to white women because she was very masculine. And she could be viewed as one of the boys.
You think she was gay?
But she may have been asexual, to be honest. She may not even been interested.
She might have been asexual,
But she was very masculine. And she looked masculine. She was big and strong. So she would not be viewed as a threat.
Can I answer your question before you get off into all this ancillary?
No, because it all intersects. It all interrelates. That's why I think because she was non-threatening to white women and she was viewed as one of the dudes to white men who worked very hard. And so does it take all of that in order to be beloved, accepted, and respected?
Okay.
I mean, that's my question.
You muffled yourself a little bit.
Do you want to answer to your question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on my Bluetooth and it's kind of switched it around.
Do you want an answer to your question?
Well, I want to ask, why do you keep interrupting, first of all? Have you been drinking?
I'm not interrupting you. Okay,
so I want to make sure that I'm clear, and if I need to repeat anything, Howard, please let me know, because you were saying I wasn't clear.
Deep, she's clear, and let me say this. When I listened to that story, and then it got me reading things, I don't know, Sarge's on the line. I had the questions of, is this woman, gay and all of this? But even if that's not the case, she got respect from the men in Montana. Hey, nigga on this phone who's gonna live in Montana today. She did that back then. That's hard. What I mean by hard, I ain't saying it's hard to do. I'm saying respect. That's respectful. She did her thing, man. She did her thing. And I don't want to argue with you guys. I want to big up this woman because she did her thing. Respect. And like I said, when I was a kid and I heard about Stagecoach Mary, that nickname,
I thought that nickname because she robbed stagecoaches. I thought that's what it was. I'm not lying. But when I heard, hold on, Thought. But when I hear the story in the background, Stagecoach Mary is because she was delivering mail. This woman stayed with nuns. This woman did things. She wasn't a criminal at all. I don't think, in that story, did any of y'all hear a criminal thing about her? No.
Other than maybe disrespect and maybe brawling. Other than that, nothing. No.
Yeah. She might have brawled. She might have been in the bar with men. And for some sucker-ass men that probably talk shit, she probably, whooped some tail. She probably did that. That's a big woman.
Yeah, one thing you got to remember about the Old West, you didn't get respect unless you earned it. They had no room for useless eaters. You had to come there being able to do something. I mean, a lot of us today living our pampered lives in modern luxury have no idea as to how coarse and brutal life was for almost everyone in the West. If you doubt it, look at that TV series 1883 on Paramount Streaming. If you don't know how brutal life was for almost everybody who went west, then I got news for you. You got a revelation coming. And that's why I want to kind of back up what Deep said earlier. Death was a constant of people back then. People died regularly of diseases that almost nobody dies from now because they didn't have antibiotics, they didn't have medication, they didn't even have hospitals. That's why Mary Fields had to go out there, take care of that sister. There might be a doctor who might come around to your house, look you over, tell you what he thought was wrong with you, give you a couple of medicines, and tell you to get under the covers and ride it out. And if you couldn't ride it out, you'd be dead. There wouldn't be no funeral homes. The people who knew you would take care of your body, and they would bury you in some plot somewhere. Death was a constant. I have no doubt that Mary and everybody living back then regularly saw dead people. They saw dead people on the trail. They saw people killed by Indians, saw people killed in highway robberies and ambushes, people who died of exposure, people who died of diseases. We have no idea living today as to how
what the hell has that got to do with
death was for people who lived back then. It was a constant.
He's telling you. He's giving you the game. He's giving you the game. That's real talk. What he's saying. That's
hey, D, look, I'm a professional in this, D. Listen, you had a couple of them, and you riding that wave, bro. Just sit back, listen, enjoy it, man. Don't talk too much. They gonna get your ass.
I'm gonna
I guarantee that. So they got me.
I ain't gonna say that. Sarge,
I'm just trying to give you some friendly advice, brother.
Sarge, keep lacing them with this game. They're not ready. I'm gonna fall back.
Well, hold on. Sarge didn't put this out in the public. I did.
I'm gonna fall back.
All right. Well, Sarge didn't put this out there. I did. And Miss Lady.
No. Sarge is giving you the game. He's telling you how this shit works.
Well, I mean, if you want to accept that, that's fine.
You're not listening.
Didn't you listen? You got that oil in you. That oil can I'm telling you this from experience.
Oh, that's what we're doing now? That's what we're doing now.
Right. Miss Lady, you there?
We're going to dig in the crates. We're going to dig in the crates and talking about somebody got oil going on. And guess what, nigga? I can say the same thing about you. You got that oil in you, And
I'm trying to tell you from experience. I'm trying to tell you from experience, nigga. I'm trying to help you.
I'm trying to help you. Sarge is giving you the game. He's
okay, and I heard that. And I heard that. Now I'm trying to get to Miss Lady.
Well, let's defer to Sarge. You and Sarge talk. Leave me alone. Y'all talk.
Okay.
I'll just sit here and be quiet.
We can leave you alone if you shut the fuck up.
Leave me
we
alone.
Can leave you alone then.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
Talk to Sarge.
Cool. All right, bro. Look, water. Maybe you can get some Gatorade or some Pedialyte. You'll be all right in the morning.
He's still talking.
Miss Lady. Miss Lady.
Talk to Sarge.
Miss Lady.
Stop
Are you this nigga. Sarge, get your people. Miss Lady, are you still there?
Well, I'm going to leave the hosting duties to you, Howard. You're the boss now, right now. You're the host, so you're going to have to check it yourself. But I understand what he's saying, you know? I mean, to the extent, we cannot imagine many of us cannot imagine living in that time, in that place. The things you had to do just to survive from day to day. It was a constant. You didn't have time for a lot of trivialities. They just didn't have time for them. They had to literally get their firewood. They had to draw their water. They had to take care of animals. They had to, occasionally when they could, do what they could with and for the children. They didn't have all these systems organized like we have today. Most of us simply have no understanding. We can't even relate to the kind of life, hard scrabble life they had to live every single day.
And I agree with you, Sarge. I agree with you, Sarge. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to ring your bell. I agree with you.
Hey, Sarge, explain to them, the audience, what it means to harvest in every venue, whether it be flesh, vegetation, humanity. What does it mean from a militaristic standpoint, Sarge? What does it mean to harvest? Explain that. Break that down to everybody that's listening.
Are you talking about harvest in the form of securing the goods of produce?
Yes.
And agriculture?
Yes.
It means that you are literally bound by the most rigid of timetables. You have to plant. First of all, you have to prepare the ground, make sure the ground is prepared for planting. You have to plant at precisely the right time. You can't afford to be off by too many days. You have to watch that seed, prevent it from being stolen by birds and insects and all manner of creatures. You got to literally set on it almost day and night. You've got to nurse it. You got to water it. Then you got to run the risk of it being destroyed by an act of nature. And if it doesn't come in, you literally run the risk of starvation and not being able to feed your family because you can't bring your goods to
what the hell does this got to do with Stagecoach Mary? When did we, I might have missed it. When did we go down another road?
Because she lived that life, and she was very much aware of it. And it helped to shape her character.
Game, man.
And it shaped her character and her behavior.
He giving you the game.
If you guys want to tie that in, okay, I can get that. What I really wanted to hear from is,
it's not us trying to tie it in. He's telling you how life was or is in that particular vein. That's how you lived.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. What state
that you're talking about?
Okay, let me ask you this. What territory or state was that in, brother? Do you remember?
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I just asked you a question. you know what state territory that was in?
No, I do not. No.
Okay. Well, then you need to shut the fuck up.
Okay. I'll shut the fuck up.
Yeah, you need to shut the fuck up. Because you riding on Sarge coattails. You don't know what the
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. What you don't understand what I'm doing is I asked Sarge to break it down in terms of
riding on Sarge coattails.
in wait a minute. In terms of an agrarian culture. See, you have to understand the delineations of how time progresses. Agrarian, industrial,
what I'm gonna do, brother, for you.
Okay, all right. I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna fall back.
Yeah, you need to fall back. What I'm gonna do for you,
I'll be quiet.
I'm gonna tell Tyrone to not put this. It's live on Facebook. But what I'm gonna do is tell Tyrone, do not make this available in the future, because I don't want you to hear yourself what you are. Right now.
I'll be quiet.
I've been where you at.
You can talk to Sarge. You can talk to Sarge.
I've been where you at.
No, we don't have to do this. Howard, we don't have to do this. You can talk to Sarge. You can talk to Miss Lady. Drop me off right where you found me. Bam! It's done. Leave me alone.
Yeah, we'll pick you up. We'll pick you up on the ride back home.
I'm out. We done.
All right.
Move on. Move on.
Miss Lady, or is anybody? You know what, Sarge? This was about the ladies. We had Miss Lady talk. I wanted the ladies to speak on see what they thought, but we didn't get any bites, Sarge. You know, we put it in the ocean, and we didn't get any bites, except for Miss Lady, a little bit.
Well, but I got to understand some of the ambivalence, as Miss Lady correctly pointed out. She pointed out the fact that there was a masculine element to Mary Fields that certainly would appeal to men in as far as conduct goes, because men like to think of themselves in the heroic sense as behaving much like Mary Fields did. When you think of Mary Fields, you don't really tend to think of her as a feminine icon, even though in that self-professed poem, or that supposed poem, a bit of doggerel that I read, she refers to her gentler side, what most people would consider her classically feminine side. But let's face it, that's not what she's celebrated for. She's celebrated embodying masculine ideals.
Well, what do you mean by her masculine ideals?
Well, no, I'm saying her behavior is more consonant with the masculine ideal of behavior and conduct than the feminine. And even though obviously Mary Fields was undoubtedly aware of her feminine side, I think it's safe to say she downplayed it.
Do you think she was gay?
I don't know. I think a more accurate decision is, as Ms. Lady said, she was probably asexual. I would lean more toward that than being a lesbian.
At that time, they would probably be more astute to agree with you and Miss Lady, that because at that time, the cultural things going on, she probably was more asexual than homosexual, I would say. I agree with you guys.
Safe bet. That's a safe bet. I'd agree with that. Yep. But
also a woman breaking norms, even at what is that? How long ago was that? 100 and something years ago, over 100 and something years.
Yeah.
Breaking the norms. I can get in here and drink with you guys. I can do this because kind of what I want to do. You know, and you can't.
Given what we know about it, it's obvious that her behavior was more geared toward her masculine identification than her feminine one. After all, it's regularly reported of her, and she says it herself, she liked to wear men's clothing.
Right. But what if that was like you said, me and you both don't think she was gay. But what if that just was a ploy to say, hey, I can do anything a man can do?
I look all around for any evidence, any romantic.
Right.
Did you find any evidence in anything in your research of her that would lead you to believe she had any romantic entanglements whatsoever? I couldn't find anything.
Right. So that's why I agree that she probably was asexual. I don't think she was on that part of the game. You know.
Agreed.
From anything that, like you said, any research, anything doesn't really say. But she fucked around. And what I'm saying is she was like a pioneer for women to say, man, I don't have to be like how you dudes want me to be. I'm going to be who I am and whoever that is. And I like that. You know what I'm saying, Sarge? I like the way, hey, I'm going to be in this bar drinking. What? And then whoop some dudes' asses in the bar. That they didn't like it. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Even though she got in trouble with I forgot the lady's name.
The bishop.
And but she came back and made it right. And did. And, you know, I mean, the woman, she wanted the best in the beginning, Sarge, for real. You can't find 15 niggas in Montana. She ran Montana back in the day. Today, you can't find 15. She did her thing. And that's why I'm saying that's respectful. That's why I wanted to do the story. I thought she was robbing stagecoaches. And until I found this out and did research, my older age, I was like, no, it had nothing to do with that. She wasn't out there robbing, stealing, and killing.
But aren't we attracted to outsized personalities of any sex? I mean, it doesn't matter, whether you're a man or a woman. People are attracted to outsized personalities because, in some respect, these outsized personalities fulfill a part of us that would like to be like that. Because most people aren't outsized. That's why these people stand out. And, I think that is part and parcel of the fascination we feel when we look at people with these bigger-than-life personalities like Mary Field. So even being a woman, I don't think is even as important as the fact that she had this big, huge personality, just like a lot of men. Now, I know you said, we talked about this earlier, and we're going to talk about Bass Reeves. He's another one.
Yeah, we're going to go to Bass Reeves. We're going to do that. We're going to do Bass Reeves next week.
Good.
And we're going to argue. We're going to argue on that.
But he's my favorite personality. He's my favorite Western personality of all.
Yeah.
Sarge.
Yes.
Do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
Explain Howard Agenda 21.
I didn't hear the last part of that. Explain Howard what?
Explain to Howard the agenda that was done in I think it was the presidency of the peanut farmer. What was his name?
Jimmy Carter?
Yeah. Agenda, that agenda. I know you know about that. I know you know
what was
about
the cornerstone of his presidency?
Right. Exactly.
I'm not sure I can really characterize the cornerstone of his presidency. All I can say is that it was characterized by incompetence and lack of focus and direction.
Oh, wow, Sarge.
And generally
you do it like that?
Generally speaking, Jimmy Carter was originally seen as an antidote to the Nixonian years, whereas Nixon was seen as being cunning and guile and glib and sort of underhanded and sneaky. Jimmy Carter came on the scene as a fresh face, determined to put aside the wrongs committed during the 8 years of the Nixon administration, and that he was going to encourage Americans to be generous and also to not desire too much, not want too much.
Now, with that being said, what was the protocol that he set forth that is still running today? It was
the Camp David Accord.
Agenda. That was one. The other one.
I think that's probably the most significant thing he did in his presidency. That's probably the most significant single act he did. But he was also widely reviled for the way he handled the Iran hostage crisis and the debacle at Desert One.
Yes. Desert Storm.
Well, there's some people that say Reagan worked with those goddamn terrorists to be elected.
Reagan was before.
No, he was not.
Reagan was elected. In fact, Reagan was seen as the antidote to Jimmy Carter. Reagan was elected in 1979.
I told Deep he needs to, Ronald
Reagan was in 1980. Jimmy Carter was elected in 1976.
I can play some audio where Reagan played the game for that when that plane and all that shit happened. I can play audio where Reagan was talking real reckless, and he was actually in talks with the people on the plane from that country, and that's some dirty shit. I don't know if it's illegal. I don't know if he got arrested.
Are you saying that Ronald Reagan had communications with officials in the federal government, particularly in the armed forces, because he had no authority whatsoever? He wasn't even a governor.
Brother, I'm saying that Reagan was in touch with those damn terrorists on the plane. I'm saying that for a fact.
Are you talking about Entebbe?
9/11?
No,
George Bush.
Reagan in the plane. And what year was that? 1979?
Wait a minute. First of all, the hostage rescue attempt that went badly and failed disastrously happened under the Carter administration in 1978.
Right.
Yeah.
79, rather.
Hold on.
But you know what? I heard it from a reliable source years ago that what people don't know was that he got a message. What country was that they had those hostages over there?
Iran. They had them in Iran.
That was Iran.
That if they harmed a single hair on the head of one of them hostages, they were going to be bombed off the face of the earth. And none of them got harmed, did they? And I got information. I also heard that.
Hold on, Ms. Daly.
Okay, I'm going to hang up. Okay. That, God God, I had my thought. Now I missed it. There were negotiations to get him out of there, but that's allegedly word had it that they wanted them held not by Carter, but by Reagan, so that he would look like a hero when they were released.
What I was saying, Sarge. She's saying what I was saying. Factually.
Okay, yeah. Now I understand what you're trying to get. You have some things out of sequence. I get it now. So you're saying that when the president-elect Ronald Reagan was manipulating the hostage crisis so he could look like a hero upon a successful conclusion. Is that what you're saying?
During the election, Reagan was in talks with those Iran motherfuckers that had the plane. He was in talks with them. That's a fact. If you want me to play some audio, I can look it up, get it for you. He was doing some sneaky, deaky, bull, shitty shit. That's a fact. And he was undermining who was the president of the United States at the time.
Okay,
he undermined him.
All right. Now, if what you're saying is as you portray it, and I suspect you are incorrect largely, what he did was a violation of law, a violation of the Logan Act, and for which he could have been prosecuted. It is against the law to do what you say he did.
Well, that's what he did.
You know, that's why we don't really know. We think we know, but we don't really know what really is going on behind the scenes. It goes deep. There's layers to this. There's players. I don't know if it's true, but that's what about the don't harm those hostages. And I know they weren't harmed, and I don't know if that was a real threat. I don't know if it was true.
Miss Lady, you telling the truth, Miss Lady.
I know people act like they know they got all the answers, and they don't know.
Sarge don't want to hear that. You telling the truth, Miss Lady. I'm on your side. You telling 100% the truth. Ronald Reagan got with terrorists and said, "Hey, keep this shit going. If I get elected, you know, we gonna end this." Ronald Reagan did it. I can get the audio. I can get newspapers of the shit. Ronald Reagan did that. Sarge know it. He gonna lie.
No, I don't know that because I will.
That happened.
Outright.
See, Jimmy Carter was really brilliant.
If you
he
got
didn't need a whole lot of folks telling him what he should do.
You have audio of Ronald Reagan committing a crime.
Was highly intelligent. He's got a nuclear physicist or something. He didn't need a whole bunch of sycophants. He didn't need a whole bunch of folks he could read and understand, you know, and it wasn't all that partying going on. It wasn't all that dressing up partying, you know, DC stuff going on with him. Okay, so a lot of people did not like him. I know he's teaching church Bible school in Georgia at his little church.
Yeah. Miss Lady,
right now.
You hit the nail on the head. And hold on, Deep. I just want to tell Miss Lady, you hit the nail on the head, sister. I'm glad you're here and said that, because Sarge would have tried to sweep that under. Ronald Reagan did that. And
no, say he did that.
Oh.
I want to hear this audio tape you say you have reference to.
Ronald Reagan didn't do that.
Because if you have an audio tape of that, you have an audio tape of Ronald Reagan committing a crime. That's what you've got.
We got audio tape.
Because that is illegal to do what you say he did.
We got audio tape.
Let me put this to you. All right? He was president-elect. He wasn't president yet when these things were alleged against him. When they seized American personnel in that...
Oh, so you admitting,
that it
happened.
Be long, Howard. I'm not going to be long. I'll get this out.
Let me just ask you this, Sarge.
When they seized diplomatic personnel out of our embassy, that was an act of war.
Let me just ask you this, Sarge.
People declare war over that kind of thing.
So let me just ask, so you admitting what you just said, that it actually happened.
No, I'm not admitting what you wouldn't let me finish. I stopped before I could finish my thought. All right, so again, that was an act of war. Now, here was the prevailing belief at the time. People were saying that if this situation was not resolved before Ronald Reagan was sworn into office, he would have the Congress declare war on Iran and the American bombers would start bombing. Because again, that is an act of war, what the Iranians did. An act of war to see somebody diplomat. That is an invasion of United States soil when you go into their embassy and take their personnel hostage.
Well, so they were the same niggas that he made a deal with.
Wait a minute. One day before Ronald Reagan was sworn into office, the Iranians said, Ali Oxenfree, we're going to let him go. One day. They waited till the day before Ronald Reagan was going to be sworn in office. Because I think they were genuinely afraid of what Ronald Reagan might do when he had presidential authority.
I'm not going to play your ass tonight because you say I'll be sandbagging and everything. I'm not going to play you tonight, Sarge. I'm not going to do that.
He's telling you.
No, you give me your honest truth. I have a problem with you disagreeing
with me. So you want me to do it? So, Sarge, you saying you want me to do it right now?
Names to state your case.
So you saying you want me to do it right now?
I want you to state your case without being
insulted. You want me to play the phone calls? So you want me to play the phone calls that are taped? You know, when the president makes phone calls.
I want to hear the phone call. Yeah, I want to hear it.
Oh, so you want me to do that right now?
Yes, I want to hear the phone call that indicts Ronald Reagan for a violation of the Logan Act.
Oh, wait a minute. Why are you putting Logan Act on and all that?
That's what I'm talking about. I mean,
no.
It is a violation of the Logan Act.
Don't put no Logan Act on it.
It is, as you describe, it is a violation of the Logan Act.
Listen, I'm talking about my nigga. Look, my wife just walked in. Listen, I'm talking about the phone calls that Reagan made to Iran.
That's what I want to hear. I want to hear it.
Okay, I'll
know if it's a violation of the law or not.
Y'all go ahead. Let me pull it up now. There's not going to be any direct phone calls, but I can pull up what was said to each and other about that situation. Baby, what's happening? Actually, I ain't gonna do that. Y'all go ahead. My wife just came home. She just gave me a hug.
So, Howard, I think the Iranians were genuinely afraid that Ronald Reagan would take severe military action against the Iranians if he took office and this situation had not been resolved. Because Ronald Reagan was making clear what his intentions were in his outrage over their seizing the embassy, which, by the way, even after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, you know what the first thing President Roosevelt did, or one of the first things he did after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor? The first thing he did was to send federal troops to protect the Japanese embassy from the wrath of the civilian population. One of the first things he did. He told troops, get over there and protect that embassy so our personnel won't get harmed in Japan. Because he didn't want anything to happen to him. Plus, he wanted to search the embassy anyway, because now we were at war with Japan once Congress declared war.
Okay.
Even during war, there's certain things you have to do with regard to diplomacy. And then we weren't at war with Iran when they went in there and seized our diplomatic personnel.
Nigga, they took that plane.
They were afraid of. They were afraid that Ronald Reagan would not be involved with the indecisiveness of Jimmy Carter, and he would act decisively in a military sense, not just a failed hostage rescue that was inadequately supplied.
I'll do a show that shows that Ronald Reagan was in the back door and with them damn Iranians and telling them, keep your shit on his neck because it's good for me.
All right,
and I'm going to win presidency.
Got evidence of that,
when I win
want
presidency,
to hear it. Okay,
I'll do a show.
To hear it if you got evidence.
I already told you I'll do a show about it. And your ass call in.
I want to hear it. I really do.
Shut the fuck up. When you call in, just shut the fuck up and take it. Because it's going to be hard.
I ain't going to just take
homo.
Nothing. No, ain't true.
No homo. It's going to be hard for you. That's a fact.
Goddamn, now you know that. You don't know. I don't roll that way, Howard. You got to make a case. You got to make a damn good one.
I told you, I'll do a show next week. I'll do a show about it. I have all the information, all the sources, everything, and you're going to be proven once again to be a fucking liar.
Okay.
It's out there. SARS, the shit been out there for 30, 40 years.
Howard,
are you saying you're going to go against me?
Hey, Greg, you threw that on the gauntlet now, goddammit. I'm picking up your gauntlet, nigga. You bring your best shot.
All right. Well, next Friday, y'all, we're going to do the show about Ronald Reagan on the inside, who wasn't elected yet.
He was the president-elect. No, he was the president-elect. He wasn't the president. He had no authority to do what you say he did.
Talking to the Iran goddamn people that got the plane, and I'm going to bring up all the information. I'm going to bring up the facts and the sources to show Reagan was talking to the terrorists and saying, hold him up a little longer, y'all. And he wasn't president-elect. It was during the election. And I'm going to bring the information. SARS, bring your ass next Friday, boy. We gonna get it in.
Hey, you better be on your game, man, because I know this subject pretty well. Do it.
I know it very well. Yeah, I already know.
Yeah, you gonna give me this October surprise jive? Ain't gonna work.
I already know.
Yeah, George Bush
feel bad.
SR-71, and they blew George Bush in an SR-71 to Persia to negotiate with the Iranians. Sure.
We can leave it alone.
All right.
We can leave it alone till next week. I'll bury your ass next week.
Okay.
We can leave it alone till next week.
All right. I hear you talking.
But you know, you a conservative and a damn clown.
I know. You just make your best step.
But I'll do it for the people. I'll do it for the people out there. I'll do it for y'all. Not SARS.
You're also going to cite the Iranian president. You believe him too, right? Because he wouldn't lie about anything now, would he?
I'm citing. My sources come from America.
Okay. Yeah, he commits an act of war against the United States, but of course he wouldn't lie about anything.
And if I find that, don't let me find that audio. Because I've heard it before.
I hope you
don't
do
let me find that audio.
If it's true, then we ought to know about it.
Don't let me find that audio, nigga.
Again, if it's true, we need to know about it for the historical record's sake.
Yeah,
I don't think
run,
you got it.
Sarge, run.
I don't think you have it.
Run, Sarge, run.
Again, I'm not running. I am demanding to hear this evidence.
Well, okay.
Demand.
Next week.
I'm not running.
Next week, be ready. You know, I'll call you and say,
I'm always ready, man. I stay ready. I live in a state.
I'll call you and say, it's on. Show up.
All right, I got it. I live in a state of readiness. I can't wait.
All right, next Friday, bring your ass.
I'll be ready.
And bring your sources. Bring everything you got. And you're going to get your ass kicked because I got the truth. You lying. But I'm done. Hey, you guys. Actually, Sarge, you too. My wife just came home. She just gave me a fucking kiss on the cheek, which is kind of different for her. But I believe that might be my lucky night. So what I'm going to do, oh, shit. Oh, you going to say it's not like that live on the air like that? I mean, what happened? I'm just talking. No, I'm just playing. But what I'm going to do, my wife said, no, it ain't your lucky night. Ain't that some shit? But what I'm going to do, man, I'm going to go on mute. Y'all do y'all thing. Line's still open. I think we're still on YouTube. Tyrone, if you want to cut off, you can do what you want to do. I'm done, Sarge. We're gonna talk about this later on in the week. And if you and when I bring you the sources and evidence, if you still want to get your ass kicked on next Friday, I'm gonna kick your ass.
And you better bring me something beyond somebody's allegations that were not proven under oath in a court proceeding. I can say anything about anybody. That don't make it so.
Well, you talk about the shoes or the news, all that. This shit ain't been in court. You holler on that shit all the time. So, but I gotta reach a higher level now. Boy, you bullshitting now. You know
wait a minute. What news?
Bring your ass. Bring your ass next Friday.
The only news I know about is the garage door pull that Bubba Wallace had 12 FBI agents investigating. Jesus.
I'm not finna get into that. I ain't finna get into
that. That was silly too, you gotta admit.
I'm talking about Ronald Reagan and Iran. I ain't finna get into no other shit. I'm gonna tear your ass up. Tear your ass up next Friday.
All right, look, good
Be
luck
ready.
with
And I'm going to call you with the sources before next Friday. I'm going to take your ass. Now, what I'm trying to do is get Tyrone, if you can keep it on YouTube, whatever. I took Q&A off. Anybody is open to talk. I'm just going to have to talk to my woman. So y'all do your thing.
All right, well, give her my regards,
thanks for showing up,
and I hope you enjoy your evening.
Hey, thanks for showing up, Sarge. I appreciate it.
Hey, I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah, and you need to let Miss Lady talk a little more. You be tripping on the women too. But next Friday, I'm gonna take your ass up.
You blame me for tonight. What I do tonight? Jesus Christ! Can I catch a break?
No, you ain't did nothing tonight. You ain't did nothing tonight. But
unmuted.
Go ahead, man. I gotta. Yeah. No, man. I was saying I'm pretty much done, man. You could stop YouTube if you want to. But I know the people. Huh?
Hello?
I don't know. Yeah, you can stop YouTube, whatever. Tell them. Yeah. Yeah, he's a narcissist. He gonna get his ass whooped if he show up Friday.
Howard made
his ass whooped.
Allegations. I responded specifically to the allegations that he made, and you again have to do your little red herring bullshit act and talk about how I say I'm always correct. That's not so, you know. Not often. Occasionally. Not often. Occasionally, but not often. I am right infinitely more than I am wrong. Oh, I'd say like 96% of the time I'm correct. Well, hey, you're free to believe that if you want. I can back it up. I can back it up, though. I can back it up. All you gotta do is cite the specific situation, and I'll back it up. That's the thing about you. See, you don't have to cite none. You're like all these hit and run liberals. They just say something and throw it out there and leave you to fill in the rest with your imagination. That's why you hate being specific. You asked me for a percentage, and that's a rough estimate. I guess I ought to be a little more precise and go back over every issue and to give you a more precise percentage. But right now, I haven't done the research. I prefer to go with what I said before. The overwhelming majority of times, I am correct. All right, well, okay. Don't hold me to it because, admittedly, I ain't done the research on that one. Well, sometimes narcissism is actually deserved when you can do it. It ain't bragging if you can do it. Yeah. Look, all you gotta do is make your case, damn it. I mean, what do you expect me to roll over and play dead because somebody says something that contradicts me? I'm so, well, you got me. I guess I better give up now. No.
You a goddamn fool.
You do it. I'm not gonna do it either.
You're a cult member and a goddamn fool, bro, and that's just what it is.
Okay, whatever.
And I look forward to next Friday. If you even still